Rio Tazwell is with us, and Rio is part of an organization that has been around for a while. He's an advocate. He's a social entrepreneur. He has 10 years experience in working to advance social and political equality. And Rio, first of all, welcome to the show. And People for the American Way, I think, has been around since the 80s, hasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, great to be joining you, Mark. Thanks for having me. Yeah, People for has been around since the early '80s, coming up on 40 years now, actually.
I want to say it was Norman Lear who started it, or was it one of the producers, maybe in conjunction with others, but was Norman Lear involved, the producer?
That is correct. The legendary Norman Lear is the founder, and he's actually still an active member of our board. So,
yeah, which is just incredible. I mean, the guy's got to be over 90 years old, I would think.
He is. Yeah, and he's still going strong.
Tell us what People for the American Way does, what your concerns are generally, and then how they are focused. What's the work that you're really is a front and center issue for you now?
Sure, yeah. So People for the American Way is a multi-issue advocacy organization. We're progressive. We're working on a lot of issues of social and political equality, everything from racial justice to gender justice, immigrant rights, LGBT rights. I manage our good government work, so we're doing a lot of stuff in the democracy space, fighting the influence of money in politics in particular, standing up for people's right to vote, pushing back against the corporate takeover of our democracy, lobbying reform, ethics, gerrymandering, redistricting, you name it. We're kind of involved in the whole range of systemic democracy reforms, including the enormous situation that we see now with potential collusion of the Trump administration and Russia, potential obstruction of justice, and then myriad financial crimes that the president may be guilty of. So we're big coalition partners. We don't usually do things all on our own, so we work very closely with a wide range of allies to leverage our membership. We have over 1 million members all across the country to engage in different types of advocacy and activism.
So People for the American Way, with that laundry list of overwhelming issues that face this country, and honestly, some of those battles we feel as though we're losing right now. Where are we gaining ground and where are we losing ground?
Well, I think progressives in general are gaining ground in the sense that we're feeling really fired up and ready for the midterms. I think people are really becoming aware that without active involvement and participation on the part of all of us, that people that really don't have our best interest in mind or have a really different worldview than us are going to show up and make our decisions for us. And they're going to get people elected into power that are going to pass laws that really go against everything that we believe. So I think generally we're winning in that progressives are ready to really build on this momentum and this movement and take it to the ballot box. So I think we're setting ourselves up hopefully for a big wave in 2018 and beyond. I mean, as far as where we're losing, I mean, take your pick. There's so many issues that we're losing on right now. I mean, every different agency, is suffering its own different types of conflicts of interest for going in the wrong direction on so many different fronts, whether it's inequality with the recent tax bill, attacks on people's health care, the environment pulling out of the climate accords. The laundry list is so long that it's hard to just pick one. So we're really trying to put out a lot of fires at once as far as our advocacy work. But I do see a lot of potential in the next few months as far as really mobilizing progressives and hopefully having some electoral wins.
When you talk about mobilizing progressives and you talk about getting people out, what are the subjects that people rally around the most? I mean, all of what you've said is true, right? We've seen an infiltration of government by a corporate structure that is rewriting legislation and is defiling the government, is destroying what little is left of the democracy that we had. But what are the things that you find rally people? Because I know you go and you speak and you meet and you get people out in a grassroots way. What are the things that energize the progressive base?
Absolutely. So I think one of the winning issues for progressives is the issue of money in politics. And it's not just for progressives either. In fact, people across the political spectrum from the right and the left and the middle all agree that there's too much money in politics and that we need to basically pass reforms to give people an equal say in our democracy. So I feel like that is really an area in which we need to do more of as far as messaging to the public. It's not something that just rallies up our base. It really appeals to people across the board. And the good news is that money in politics is in fact a solvable problem. It's not some existential crisis. While it might feel like that in some ways, there actually are tangible reforms that we can pass. Big, long-term, ambitious reforms like amending the Constitution to overturn Citizens United, and then also more, short-term achievable reforms like increasing transparency and disclosure of political spending, enacting systems of publicly funded elections that give grassroots candidates the opportunity to effectively fundraise and mount a competitive campaign without courting high-dollar corporate donors.
Well, you know how we feel about all of that at TYT. The constitutional amendment on down is very much to the core of what we believe in here at TYT. But you also mentioned something which is interesting, that you said these issues have appeal to those who maybe weren't on board, that you wouldn't consider part of the progressive movement prior. Have you seen more support and people more receptive to showing support to yours and other organizations that you connect with than in the past?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, well, I think in part we have to look back at what happened in 2016 and realize that Donald Trump effectively owned this issue. He said he was going to drain the swamp. I think he did a pretty effective job of messaging this in a very simplistic way that really pulled on people's heartstrings and pulled on people's emotions. And he was able to basically manipulate the issue to his own gain. And I think progressives need to kind of learn from that and realize that we need to talk about this in really simplistic ways, and if we do that, then I think we'll start to see, a lot of people that maybe don't agree with us on everything as far as like social issues come to our side as far as fighting for a democracy that works for all of us. So I do think it's a work in progress, but I think that this ultimately will be the winning issue that gets progressives into power.
I love that you said this, because it's been a pet peeve of mine. I feel the right has messaged better than the left has. The progressive movement has been swept under by some fast rhetoric from a charismatic guy, and Donald Trump is that. I mean, there's a reason that everybody has this weird attraction to this guy, and they show his empty podium in the run-up to the general election, as opposed to a Bernie Sanders rally, which has 20,000 people in the seats. Right. So the messaging that we have to do is a big part of our future. I really like to hear you talking about that.
Absolutely, and I mean, it's so exciting to see young people in particular realizing that this is the issue of all issues. And I think Bernie Sanders did a phenomenal job of really bringing it into the cultural sphere as far as people talking about the millionaires and the billionaires and overturning Citizens United, and then the importance of addressing money in politics. I think that's really just the start. We need more politicians and candidates running on this issue in particular. And we just need more people out there talking about it as advocates, as activists, as individuals, as members of the media. And I think that's something that the mainstream media could really be doing much more of. We love to talk about these sensational issues that get the headlines, but there's not a lot of coverage that drills a little bit deeper and looks at the systemic problems that really cause all of the ills of this country and really the world. But I do think that we are starting to see a shift as far as people's awareness. I mean, even just to give a really recent example with the Parkland shooting, these kids from Stoneman Douglas High School are doing an amazing job of articulating the connection between the NRA and campaign finance. And the Republican Party, for the most part, that's beholden to the NRA and their campaign donations, and they're all over the mainstream media on cable TV talking about it. And I feel like that's just the start of what we'll see happening for issues of all kinds, not just gun violence.
It has to be laid bare. Great to meet you via Skype. Rio Tazewell, good luck. People for the American Way, if you're interested in more information and supporting them, pfaw.org is the website, and donation at tinyurl.com/donate. OPFAW. I don't know. I would just go to pfw.org, but is that what it is? pfw.org, right?
Yep, pfaw.org.
pfaw.org.
Exactly.
And there's all right. Rio, pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Good luck.